And you've just heard Queen Christina II by Bill Wells and Norman Blake from the album Dreams 2425. And I'm delighted to be joined by Bill Wells now. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
First of all, can you tell us about Dreams 2425?
Well, it's a collection of, as it says, dreams. I've been dreaming stuff for years now, and basically I picked some of the. I mean, I dream them, like all the time. So this album is a collection of dreams from these years,
Right.
and a kind of selection from each of the years, and sung by. Well, it just kind of happened that way that I was in touch with Norman, and I had this kind of batch of dreams, and I was going out to see him, and I just suggested that we record some stuff, and we did that in an afternoon
Oh, wow.
uh, at Norman's house. He's got a wee recording set up, so he basically recorded himself. He learned the tunes on the day,
Right.
and just immediately sang them perfectly in one
So,
afternoon.
had you made notes of your dreams, or were they just in there and remembered? Because, I often have dreams and within a
I
half an hour, it's forgotten what I was
Oh no, I have
dreaming.
to. I have to. I usually sing them, usually very badly, um, into my iPod or whatever,
Yeah.
and then work them out on the piano as well. Because I found that if I've just the singing version is usually not enough by the next morning for me to recognise what it was in the first place. So I have to kind of really, try and put it down in some kind of musical way that is recognisable, uh, you know, um, or actually write it down sometimes, you know, because it depends. I mean, sometimes it's pretty vague. Sometimes it's just a melody,
Right.
but and sometimes I just wake up with a melody. But sometimes it's a scenario that'll, there'll be maybe a full band there, and I'll hear, for instance, one of the tracks on the Norman side. I dreamt my father was singing a song. It's the "What Am I Afraid Of" one,
Right.
um, and I actually dreamt he was singing. I mean, this isn't on the. This isn't. I usually try and get the version on the record as close to the dream,
Right.
just to be as true to that as possible. In this case, it was a big band. My dad was singing with a big band, and it was kind of a swing version. And I thought, well, it's very difficult to do that on a computer um, convincingly. So I just thought, well, it sounded like a pretty good song as it was. It's one of the most complete songs, and I think that's one of the reasons is because there's a whole scenario, and therefore I could remember more of it. So it depends from dream to dream. Sometimes they're pretty vague, and they're maybe just even melodies. But sometimes they're full songs in a sort of scenario that really helps me sort of preserve the whole thing. So
Because sorry, that's interesting because that track is, I think it's the longest in the album, isn't it?
yes, exactly, yeah. And I combined it with another one as well, which was a sort of questioning. Um, uh, that was a kind of nightmare one of the. I forgot what exactly it was, but there's something kind of dark about that. But because they were both questions, I thought they would. I do try and combine things. I mean, I'll maybe change the keys of things occasionally.
Right.
No, I don't. I try. I say I try and keep it as close to the original as possible. Just words and music and everything, and instrumentation if I can. But then there are times where just to uh, combine things, or just for somebody's voice. You maybe think, well, that key doesn't suit that person's voice, so there will be slight modifications, but it's pretty much, as it is. I mean, like, what I've said, like 95% of what's on that record, I just heard, and, words and music and arrangement and, harmony, and, keep to that.
It's most of the tracks are really short. You kind of, as you say, snippets.
Yes, aye.
And it's when you came to record it with Norman and then with Abby, and we'll talk about who else is on the album as well. So you said that you could have recorded it in one day with Norman. Is that right? His side?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I'd collected these bits and pieces over a period of months.
Yeah.
And I put them into Logic, usually in a very kind of basic form. So there's maybe just the melody and the harmony, and maybe just a couple of repeats. So I'll usually use that as a kind of basis, and then I'll do something with the backing on computer to kind of flesh it out and make it an actual song.
So when Norman was working on it, you were the short ones, were they done really quickly? Was it like, we've got them and then move on to the next?
Sure, yeah. I mean, sometimes they're frustratingly short, because I think sometimes they're part of something that went on a bit longer. I mean, I've dreamt things like, I went to the premiere of an unreleased John Lennon album and sat through the whole thing, and then when I woke up, I couldn't remember. It sounded pretty good when I was sitting there listening. I couldn't remember any of it.
Oh.
I mean, I've dreamt I've seen Keith Jarrett live, but his piano playing is way above anything I can recreate. So that was just well, that sounds great, but I don't know. It's interesting though, because that would be on such a. I mean, I don't know what exactly it sounded like.
Yeah.
Because I can't, but it's interesting that I think that I must be able, on my kind of subconscious, go to places that I can't go in my waking life.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think I'll get things that will be in dreams that I wouldn't have thought of. I'm sure, just naturally.
Yeah, I do love the idea that you'd maybe dreamt a full new John Lennon album, and then you go, "Oh, if only I'd remembered all that."
Yeah, I know.
And you mentioned that was Norman's side, and I did wonder if you considered it an album with two sides, because you've got 24 and you've got 25 in 2 different years, but you've also got Abby Villamy playing as well. Can you talk about her involvement?
Well, Abby's done. You see, I've done. I mean, this is the first record that's actually come out in sort of Europe, UK, of Dreams, and I've actually. It's the. How many have I got? There's been another 7 before that.
7 Dreams albums.
7. Well, I mean, sides, maybe not.
Right.
7. They're usually like 12 to 15 minutes, and they're. Yeah, I mean, I started releasing these in 2012. The first one of these came out,
okay, wow.
And that was at that time. It was a. I mean, I've been dreaming stuff for quite a while, even before that. But in this case, I was this. This was the first one. It's called Summer Dreams, and you see, it's not. These things aren't on Spotify, which is probably good news in some ways. Well, I mean, it's a very mixed feelings about Spotify.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so these have come out in Japan. The first one was called Summer Dreams, and that was actually written for. It actually came about. In fact, it started the whole kind of idea of releasing these in that way, sort of 12 different tunes or ideas in a sort of piece, and it was done for. I was actually commissioned by Alistair Campbell at. Alistair, Counterflows guy.
No, I don't know.
The Counterflows Festival at all?
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the first ones. I mean, this was maybe Counterflows. No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually. It wasn't actually Counterflows Festival. The first one. But it was an event that was promoted, sort of hosted by Alistair in conjunction with Cafe Otto, and it was I think called the Oto Wasabi Project, which is a Japanese project for children with learning difficulties and professional musicians as well, and also the carers of these children. And it's it seems to be. I mean, I was looking at it the other night. It seems to be thriving. It has one of my kind of Japanese heroes, Otomo Yasuhide. I don't know if you know him at all. He's a he's kind of leading name of the experimental scene in Japan,
right?
And he was involved in this as well. And they were coming across. It was like 40 people were coming across, and doing a performance in Cafe Otto, and then coming up to Glasgow. I mean, and just the logistics of that must have been so incredibly difficult. And they did two nights. There was groups like Sonic Bothy were also
right
involved in these two performances.
No, it's really interesting because I didn't know about that festival, and also
Yeah.
you mentioned that these albums that you're talking about are these sides.
Yeah.
And they're not available to stream, or at least not on Spotify. But if people did want to find them, are they still available?
Some of them are. No, they've generally been released on a record label called 7EP,
right,
in Tokyo, and so they're just available in Japan if you want to, which means they're pretty expensive actually.
Sure.
And they're just like one side, so it's just a 12-minute. So it's a CD that lasts.
Right.
So when it gets reviews, I guess gets points deducted for it being so short. But I think, well, that's just the nature of it. It's a 12-minute CD. That's I suppose if it's expensive, then it's maybe. But it's, it tends to be more expensive. But anyway, the thing with what happened with the Oto Wasabi project was, I'll try to keep it more brief, was that Alistair commissioned me to do something for them, and I didn't know what to do because they were an organisation which used free improv as a way to kind of level the playing field for all the people involved, for the professional musicians, and also people that had sometimes very severe learning difficulties. You could hardly really play anything at all in a conventional manner.
Sure.
So I was a wee bit at a loss to know, what to do exactly. And I, because I'd had some dreams at some points, I decided that for a month I would write down my dreams. I would think about it through the day. And this was interesting because it did make me realise that there was, even though obviously, there's a very limited amount of control you can have over your dreams. Yeah. But I did find that if I was thinking about this all the time, that I came up with 12 ideas over the period of just a month, and they were related in some ways to that idea. There was songs with things like "People There Behind Me," "People There Behind Me," and there was things like "He Does Not Like What I Do" or something. And they were very. You could imagine them as part of that kind of that kind of dynamic of people being teachers, or and there was one the sort of big one that came out that was just a tune called "Doesn't Play," which I thought was really kind of so on the nose for that whole idea of you can take that in so many ways, because it was just the two words doesn't play over and over. And I thought, well, this, so I did a wee kind of demo recording of it, just a wee sort of 12-minute, and just used my Logic, and I got Abby to sing the songs that were on that, and I let Alistair hear it. Still wasn't sure exactly how to incorporate that into it being a commission for the event, but Alistair was just, well, you should release that, just, or make copies of it just for the people that are there.
Yeah.
And, that would be, and we can perform it on one of the nights, just Abby and myself. So we did that, but I also sent it to the organisation before they came across, and they actually took that piece, Doesn't Play, and it was an incredibly moving moment, because one of the kids from that project, they sort of put a mic in front of him and he started singing Doesn't Play, and I think it was as much a surprise to the people in the organisation as it was that this guy could do this.
Yeah.
And it was a really incredibly emotional moment, and it made them kind of change their idea of what they could do as well, So I know I've gone on about it, but it was a big thing. That was one of the best musical moments of my entire life.
That sounds amazing, Bill. It really does. Yeah. And that connection that music can make, I think it's difficult to explain, practically, but for someone to be, is inspired the right word, but to make that connection that promotes that reaction.
Yes, yeah. So I think, I haven't said that, I think that record's deleted now, so I don't think...
But you were saying Abby was involved way back then, and
that was on the first. Abby's been on most of them, and the singers have generally been. And at that point, so I did Summer Dreams, then I did Autumn Dreams, and I did Winter Dreams. I did Winter Dreams with Audrey Bizouem. I don't know if you know her.
No, I don't think so.
Rev Magnetic.
Yes.
Which she plays bass and sings. And also a band called Gift Horse, and she's got an amazing voice, really beautiful singer. So she has in the so these three came out. So summer, autumn, winter, and then I managed to get 4. This was better value, right enough. This is the most recent one.
Right.
I've got this one called Collected Dreams, which is still a CD, but it's 4 different sort of 12-minute. So it's like 48 tunes on one CD, and that was relative, and that's just called Collected Dreams. And 3 of these are sung by Abby, and 1 is sung by Audrey. And that came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
Because it was, there was a few that I'd sort of built up over the years, and it was still on this the same record label called 70 EP, and still only came out in. It'd be nice to get them out. It's good. So this is another label that I work with, Karaoke Calc, and that's based in Berlin. So it's a bit more available and kind of just it's easier
If
to
anyone
get.
listening, it is on Spotify if people want to go and listen to that for all its goods and evils. And I'm like
Yeah,
you, I have
yeah, yeah,
goods and
yeah,
bad
yeah.
thoughts that people can hear it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, in that way, it gets it out there, and
yeah,
more. I mean, there's the 7 EP's got a Bandcamp, so that uh, you can buy these, uh, download them anyway,
yeah,
versions of them.
which
Um,
which is a much better way of doing it, I would say.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, we're talking about this album and you working with Abby and Norman, and I was thinking back on nearly all your work, I think, and you're a kind of serial collaborator. And I
yeah,
wonder
yeah,
what it is you enjoy about that process. There must be something that really kind of makes sense to you about working with others.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know if enjoy's the right word. Actually, it did start to occur to me, um, only only after the years of doing that, that it was. I'm not sure that. I think there's an interesting Van Dyke Parks quote when he talks about collaborating, and he says, "Best scenario, mortal enemies," and that really kind of rung true to me. I have to say, uh, because
How
I think
interesting. That is really
yes,
interesting, Bill.
yeah,
Yeah.
you because you've got to be very judgmental, you know, and that can be difficult if you're. I mean, it can be that you collaborate with people and it is an easy thing because you're so much on the same page that it just seems kind of almost seamless.
Yeah.
But then there's this sort of creative friction thing, which you know artistically is probably one of the is a really strong thing.
It's a
That
necessary, it's almost necessary
yeah,
to
yeah,
get a
yeah,
good result.
yeah, yeah. So in that respect, I had to be perfectly honest, I had to tone down on the collaboration aspect of what I was doing because it was absolutely doing my head in.
You were making too many enemies.
Well, no, it was just no, it wasn't that. It was just very stressful,
Okay. All right. Okay.
and I think I was kind of maybe a bit naive about it when I went into it.
Yeah.
No, that makes me seem a wee bit negative about it, but I just think there's definitely that side of something. I mean, I quite like see for the dreams thing. I'm pretty much. That's not so much collaborative. That's more or less just me telling folk what to do. So, in that respect, that's easy. I need some of that.
Yeah.
I need to be in control of some things to make the other things, kind of bearable. Uh, so, but it's just, yeah, it was kind of a weird thing with the collaborations. I'm just interested. I mean, I think basically I'm interested in lots of different kinds of music, and I'm interested in the way that people work.
Yeah.
And very often you'll learn more from somebody that just comes from such a different place musically. Like for somebody like Stefan Schneider
Mhm.
from Two Republic Rock, and who does electronics, and really hasn't a clue about you know music theory
Yeah.
or something like that. I mean, he's just coming from such a different place that it's actually. I think you can learn more from doing from being with someone like that than you can from somebody that's maybe just knows more about jazz or something. Or,
Yeah.
you
Sure.
know, because it's just such. And even Aidan, Aidan's, that was we were both coming from very different places musically. I would say, in terms of what we know. But then again, there was a lot of stuff that I was kind of quite surprised. There'd be lots of things we would totally bond on. Like what we'd listen to, like a White Album or something like that. Or, you know. So, but I
Because
think yeah.
sorry, on you
Sorry.
go, on you go.
No, I don't. It's just you're going to get things that that come out that are more unexpected, I think.
Because, looking again through your past music, you've touched and worked in a number of genres. I think jazz, electronic, indie. If we talk about Aidan Moffat, and there's a lot of it there as well. And I was just wondering if someone is listening to this interview and they don't know your work, do you think there's a perfect place for them to investigate first before they look at the rest of it? The kind of starting off point for Bill Wells.
I think the dream stuff. I mean, I don't want to sound too contrived or anything, but I think the dream stuff is a good end because it has got just so many kind of varieties of genres in there. And it is a kind of subconscious thing where it just sort of naturally there are a huge range of different types, and it is kind of. I mean, I always think my default sort of pop music and melody, and generally that's that's present in most of these dreams.
I could agree with you about that because I think when you listen to the album as a whole, the tracks can come quickly because as we mentioned, and also there are different styles, and it is a good representation, I think, of your second.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you still play live at all? Do you still do? I mean, I think you mentioned you were playing last on Monday there.
I still do a wee gig, sort of locally, and I do. Well, we're going to be performing the Dreams record. I should get a plug in for that.
You definitely should get a plug in for that. Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. I was wondering. Yeah.
So we're playing that on the 31st of July at the Glad Cafe.
Brilliant.
And Norman and Abby will be there. Abby's coming up from Yorkshire. And we will do a version of it, which I have performed some of these before, and it's kind of tricky to work out the best way to. I'm still not sure this is going to be the best way or not, but this time we're going to do basically acoustic versions of the tracks. But I think they're strong enough in musical terms that they will withstand. It's either that or do a more kind of like a backing track thing, which is similar to the record. That can cause as many. I mean, they're generally quite simple little pieces, but when you've got to do 24 in a row, it's quite. And if it's just which this is, unfortunately, it's just like a one-off thing where we'll rehearse it, and it'll be the one gig. We'll have to try and get it right for that, and then, who knows if we'll get another chance to play it. I've got another band. You know what I mean? So give us I've got a band with Danielle Price, who's a tuba player. It's called the Sensory Illusions.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my main kind of live project at the moment. It's good because it's just the pair of us, and I don't have to worry. That said, we just did a gig. Maybe I don't know if I should mention this or not, but anyway, we just did a gig with Tom Bancroft.
You all right?
Do you know him?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's got this event called Playtime, and he invites sort of guest musicians to. He's been with us for about 10 years at least, and so Danielle and I did one as the Sensory Illusions guests with Playtime. So it was. As it turned out, it was a band that was three of the regulars: so Tom, Graham Stephen, Mario Caribe, Graham Stephen guitar, Mario Caribe on bass, Danielle and myself, and I managed to get two sax players,
right,
as well, Brian Molly.
Oh yes,
and you probably know. who's done, and actually, I mean, I played with him ages ago. I think I first met him. I played in we played together in Isabel Campbell's band,
Yes.
The Gentle Waves,
Yes. Yeah.
years and years ago. And another of my friends called Chooks Bonga, who you would know, you would recognise that name if you knew it. Who's a South African alto player who's based in London, and he came up to do the gig. So that is in the pipeline because it was videoed and recorded. So that I don't know. That should be available to watch.
Excellent. So that'll be available sometime soon. Well, when it is,
yeah.
I'll let our
that would be good. Yeah, we're still waiting on doing. Danielle and I are going to do a Zoom thing with Tom, but it was a lot of it was a lot of. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff on it. They're quite long gigs, like jazz gigs. Unlike the one we're going to be doing at the Glad Cafe, which is only going to last half an hour. So there was quite a lot of material. I think that might be quite a good kind of overview into what I'm doing now, because there was a few things that I'd written ages ago that we played, and some of the new stuff that I've been doing with Danielle. I mean, one of the reasons is for the duo is just a very kind of the practicality of just having a band with two people, and it makes it so. Because I started off, with a 7-8 piece band. When I very first started playing music of my own, which was sort of late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. I just actually started with a 7-piece. I was on like 4 horns and a rhythm section, so I could learn how to arrange things. And I had no idea what I was letting myself in for, And trying to get that number of people together on a regular basis is actually not possible. As it turns out, if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have, started doing that. But
was that your kind of first challenges of collaboration back then? You went, oh yeah, this isn't as easy as I thought.
Well, no, that wasn't so much. That was more me telling people what to do, I suppose. Although there was a sort of collaborative
element. Well, that's a theme.
I don't know. I worked with Karen Mantler. Do you know her? She's the daughter of Carla Bley and based in New York. And I did a record with her. And the initial idea was that it would be a collaboration, because I was just a big fan of her music, and she plays harmonica. For me, one of the best harmonica players on the planet, And but when I suggested collaboration, she got back and said, "I've never collaborated with anyone in my life, and I'm not about to start now."
That's good.
But she was very helpful. I mean, she's still on that record. She sings on it. She plays piano. So, in that respect, and she was, really helpful in getting. There's a singer called Sid Straw. I don't know if you know her. Who would work with Van Dyke Parks, and there was pals with Michael Stipe, and that whole kind of. And there was a point where she was, as a solo artist, looking like, it was, I think she had like a couple of singles or something like that. But a name that I certainly knew, and it was Karen that said, do you want to get Sid Straw? And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
So that was, I was just thinking about the collaboration thing, and what exactly it means. I mean, sometimes, if it's like a jazz band, there'll be a certain amount of freedom I'll give people.
Sure.
So in that respect, I suppose it's But I don't know. I think I've got a reputation for sort of saying to people, "Do whatever you want," and then when they start doing something, I'll say,
You do that.
"But not that."
Well, Bill, you've given us lots of names for us to go and investigate, which is fantastic.
Good. Right.
The gig at the Glad Cafe again. You said it was the 31st of July, so
That's
people
right.
can get tickets for that now.
That would be good. Yeah.
We're going to hear another track in a moment. One of your tracks with Abbey, Alternative Hollow World. But first of all, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure to do so.
Thanks for asking. I really appreciate it.
And this is Bill Wells and Abby Viami and Altogether Hollow World.